liftoff and the clock has started.
Welcome to episode 13 of the Tesla Time Podcast, the UK Tesla Unofficial Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Winter, and on this week's show, we delve into AI Day. We hear from all the execs in the know at Tesla, including Elon himself. I share with you my opinion of the conference, what it means to Tesla owners and people thinking about jumping into the world of Tesla. And we, of course, have to talk about robots for a bit. Along with much, much more, stick with me because it's that time again. It's Tesla time. Tesla time indeed. You join me on Thursday, the 26th of August as I record this. Although the show will be going out on Friday, the 27th of August, so tomorrow. And, you know, lots to get through this week, even more so than normal, because, of course, this week we saw Tesla's AI Day. So we're going to be talking about the fallout of such an event. I'm aware that it's been covered a lot. I'm going to try and put it in a, you know, such a long event. I mean, it's 3 hours long plus, I think. So I'm going to try and condense it down into bite-sized chunks that you will be able to understand because it was super, super technical. So hopefully I'll be able to do that and give you all the highlights and stuff. We're going to be hearing from all the execs and we're going to be talking about robots, which I'm sure you're well aware of. And admittedly, when I started this podcast towards the start of the year, talking about robots was not something I predicted, but, you know, following Tesla is like that. You just kind of hold on to the ankles of such a crazy company as you go for the ride. But the good, the bad, the ugly, Tesla time is along for that ride. Right, lots to get through, clips to play, and of course a never-ending wheel of news continues to spin, so let's jump in. So as you probably know, Tesla's big annual conference is usually around a specific subject. This year it was all around AI. Last year it was around batteries, and the year before that, autonomy. So AI, how are Tesla enabling, integrating, and I guess developing AI to help drive incredible products that are coming out of the factory? Now, this AI Day took place on the 19th of August, so last Thursday. And as per Elon's tweet back in July, the main purpose of this event was recruitment. And that is going to be very important later on. Okay, so remember that. Now, before I jump into kind of dissecting this all up and explaining the show to you and giving you my thoughts on that stuff, a couple of housekeeping notes on the show. Okay, firstly, it was a face-to-face invite-only event. It was held at Tesla's site in Palo Alto. Those invited mainly consisted of AI professionals in some way, shape or form. And I've heard from other analysts and media outlets online that the media people that were at the show were given a different coloured lanyard, right? And there was apparently like 2 or 3 media people there. The rest of the population, you know, 100 plus people were, you know, brain the size of the planet, super duper clever AI people. Now, also keep that in mind. The show was not necessarily like an Apple keynote kind of show. It wasn't, you know, a fluffy marketing show. It was a deep dive, technical AI discussion. And I'll be honest with you, and I'll hold my hands up, some of the slides that they put up, some of the equations they explained, some of the words that they used, I didn't understand in the slightest. And I'm a fan of Tesla. I'm a fan of the products. But, I mean, gee whiz, this was a super deep dive, okay? Having said that, by the way, if you are interested in, you know, AI, artificial intelligence, machine learning, supercomputing, anything kind of that nature, do go and check the show out. It was broadcasted on Tesla's YouTube channel, so head over to their YouTube channel and you can, if you can, set aside 3 hours or so, because that's how long the show was. So you're going to need a big chunk of time set aside to consume it. Then by all means, go and do that. Right, let's jump in. So the show was split into 5 sections, okay? You had the first section was all around vision. So neural networks, the perception of AI's environment, in this case, the car's environment, planning and control was the second section. So how the vehicle moves and operates and how closely tied to the vision output that is. The third section was all around labeling, which I knew nothing about, but this is effectively training Tesla's neural network. So when I say labeling, I literally mean labeling the entire world so that the computer knows what a curb is, what a dog is, what a road sign means or road marking means, and all that good stuff. So what's that? Vision, planning and control, labeling. Fourth was Dojo. So this is the supercompute hardware that they are rolling out internally that is going to be able to take the vision and the real world data that the FSD fleet is providing, learn from it, label within it, and then essentially improve the overall planning, control and functionality of the vehicle and of full self-driving. To do all of this, you're going to need a super duper computer, and that is what Dojo is. And then finally, the fifth section was the Tesla bot, which, we'll get onto that. So let me break this down. Wait, before I do, let me give you my overall view of the presentation. Okay, so the presentation for me showed me three main things, three main takeaways, right? Number one, Tesla were not kidding. The event was heavily focused on getting AI professionals excited and pumped about the future of AI within Tesla, i.e. kind of a come and work for us kind of feel. Secondly, Tesla have a deep and rich AI team that are working incredibly hard. They're treading new ground on all things AI. Things they are, they're rolling out and that they're working on and developing, they're doing quicker and they're doing earlier than anyone else, right, in the market today. And that for me was just staggering. And then finally, the third thing was this view of growth. Like Tesla are, they're hugely focused on growing this team. That's why it's all around, recruitment, growing the rate of improvement and or change that they can deliver to the FSD program and beyond. And then growing in the sense of kind of how do we take this market leading advantage we believe we have in AI and offer that to other lines of business, other companies inside and outside of the automotive industry. And they're kind of trying to strike this balance of like, it's not a walled garden. Like we do want to share what we have here. We do want to share this incredible AI functionality that we have. We want to share that with other businesses. But at the same time, it's not going to be open source, right? We're going to have to charge for it because, simply we have put so much effort, time, money, and research into getting to where we are now. So growth would seem to be a key focus area as well. So, overall, for the bits that I could understand, I was blown away. Just blown away with the sheer investment Tesla have made. On the Tesla Time podcast, we spend so much time talking about factories and production lines and 0 to 60 times and efficiencies and new products. And yeah, that's all super important to Tesla. But going into this show, I had no idea just how huge of a focus this is for Tesla, how huge of a focus AI is for Tesla. So let's try and break this 3-hour deep dive technical event down. Bear with me here. We'll see how we get on. So let's start with Elon. So Elon comes out on stage at the very opening of the show, and this is what he has to say.
Sorry for the delay. Thanks for coming. And sorry, I had some technical difficulties. Really need AI for this. So what we want to show today is that Tesla is much more than an electric car company, that we have deep AI activity in hardware, on the inference level, on the training level, and basically, I think arguably the leaders in real-world AI as it applies to the real world. And those of you who have seen the full self-driving beta, I can appreciate the rate at which the Tesla neural net is learning to drive. And so this is a particular application of AI, but I think there are more applications down the road that will make sense, and we'll talk about that later in the presentation. But we basically want to encourage anyone who is interested in solving real-world AI problems at either the hardware or the software level to join Tesla, or consider joining Tesla. So let's see, we'll start off with Andre.
A quick opening there from Elon, but really giving a grounding and levelling the expectations of what to expect from the show. And as you heard there, he soon hands off to Andre Carpathy, who we've heard from before, by the way, on the Tesla Time podcast. Andre is the head of vision at Tesla, and he begins the first of those 5 presentations that I mentioned, this one being all around vision. Now, before I dive into vision, here's Andre's opening remarks, which I think gives a good introduction to the subject matter.
Okay, hi everyone, welcome. My name is Andre, and I lead the vision team here at Tesla Autopilot, and I'm incredibly excited to be here to kick off this section, giving you a technical deep dive into the Autopilot stack and showing you all the under-the-hood components that go into making the car drive all by itself. So we're going to start off with the vision component here. Now, in the vision component, what we're trying to do is we're trying to design a neural network that processes the raw information, which in our case is the 8 cameras that are positioned around the vehicle. And they send us images, and we need to process that in real time into what we call the vector space. And this is a 3-dimensional representation of everything you need for driving. So this is the 3-dimensional positions of lines, edges, curbs, traffic signs, traffic lights, cars, their positions, orientations, depths, velocities, and so on. So here I'm showing the video of the raw inputs that come into the stack, and then the neural network processes that into the vector space. And you are seeing parts of that vector space rendered in the instrument cluster on the car. Now, what I find kind of fascinating about this is that we are effectively building a synthetic animal from the ground up. So the car can be thought of as an animal. It moves around, it senses the environment, and acts autonomously and intelligently. And we are building all of the components from scratch in-house. So we are building, of course, all of the mechanical components of the body, the nervous system, which is all of the electrical components, and for our purposes, the brain of the Autopilot, and specifically for this section, the synthetic visual cortex.
Andre gives a good account for the importance of vision and recognizing the world around the car. The analogy he makes there, I actually really like, the analogy between the car being an animal. And I don't know if it comes across as well on podcast form, but he actually has a slide up outlining the similarities of how a pair of eyes links to your brain, and then how the 8 cameras of a Tesla link to the car's onboard computer. Now, one of the primary focuses of Andre's presentation was all around the move from image space to vector space. And I know what you're thinking, what on earth is vector space? Well, if you're an AI bot, switch off now, because what I'm about to do is talk AI and you're just going to go, this guy doesn't know what he's So just switch off now. But for just general people who like Tesla, just think of it as a change from capturing image space is like capturing constant 2D images and analyzing them bit by bit. And then more photos are being done. Again, bit by bit, analyzing, then more photos. And it's kind of like stop, start, stop, start. Whilst vector space approaches it in more of a 3D approach, okay? It's building a 3D world around the vehicle based on what the cameras are seeing. And then it's constantly updating and analyzing that 3D world. So rather than stop, start, it's like a constant 3D visualization, basically. It's way more advanced and difficult to do, right? That's all that you need to know. And I know, actually, a good way of thinking about it is, imagine you're on Google Maps and you're just looking at a 2D map view, and then you hop into Street View, right? The image is now, it's more detailed, it's 3D, it's telling you more information, and then you can stitch that image together as you travel down a road on Street View, right? I don't know if you've done that, but you can kind of push down a road and it will kind of stretch the image and kind of stitch it together. This, by the way, also helps massively with labeling. So vector space helps massively with labeling, but we'll get onto that. And of course, by stitching all these images the car is taking together using a virtual 3D world, that helps significantly with things like depth recognition and velocity, so how fast the car should or shouldn't be going, and timing speed ups and slow downs correctly and smoothly. So yeah, extremely difficult to do, and Tesla are doing it, right? And a lot of the AI people in the room here are going, oh wow, that's really cool, because it's a thing that no one else is doing. But here's the real wacky thing. The other thing they're doing is adding a fourth dimension. So it's gone from 2D to 3D and now 4D. And that fourth dimension is time. So as they build this 3D virtual world, they're also time stamping it along the way. So again, this helps with labeling, depth recognition, and velocity, but particularly helps with things that the car can't see. And Tesla seems to be using this to smooth the overall functionality that radar was helping with, which is now gone as they've moved to pure vision. So, for example, and the example actually Andre gives is a person walks behind a car, at a crossroad or whatever. The Tesla is going to know to expect that person to come out the other side of that car and can predict the right thing to do, whether that be slow down or stay stationary. So at a point in time, the Tesla, cannot see that person, right? It's not showing up on the cameras because that person has gone behind a car or a van. But it because it's time-stamped them going behind that, it can expect, the person to come out the other side. And then there's temporal and space memory, okay? Which is a whole other thing. Basically, say you're sat at a traffic light for 2 minutes and you don't want the time-based memory to forget the road marking you drove over 2 minutes ago just behind you, the space-based memory would be able to look back and store that road marking in its memory so that it didn't forget. And then, I need to merge in the next T-junction or whatever that marking meant. So yeah, very interesting stuff. Like I said, very deep dive. I did warn you. So I'm not going to play you loads of clips from the event. But again, Tesla just flexing their AI muscles to show, look how much we're doing here. Where are all the others, in this market? We're way ahead. Right, moving on to the next section, which as promised was planning and control. Okay, so this was presented by Ashak, Tesla's director of Autopilot software. So the first thing he did was he said this.
Thank you, Andre. Hi, everyone. My name is Ashok. I lead the planning and controls, auto labeling and simulation teams. So, like Andre mentioned, the vision networks take dense video data and then compress it down into a 3D vector space. The role of the planner now is to consume this vector space and get the car to the destination while maximizing the safety, comfort, and the efficiency of the car. Even back in 2019, our planner was a pretty capable driver. It was able to stay in the lanes, make lane changes as necessary, and take exits of the highway. But city driving is much more complicated. Rarely there are structured lane lines. Vehicles do much more free-form driving. Then the car has to respond to all of cut-ins and crossing vehicles and pedestrians doing funny things.
So planning and control is all around getting the car to its destination in the most efficient, comfortable, and safe way possible. And although Tesla were doing great at this with highway driving back in 2019, which is effectively advanced cruise control, city streets driving is a whole other ballgame. So Ashak goes on here to highlight two key problems. The first is something called non-convex, go figure, and the second is high dimensional. So again, for normal people who aren't ridiculously clever here, this is probably the best way to explain it is basically non-convex, the first problem mentioned, means that oftentimes there are more than one optimal solution. For example, what color is a tomato? That's a convex question. There's one optimal solution there, it's red. But like a question like why is it sunny today? Well, that requires a non-convex answer. There's lots of factors and not necessarily one right answer. Hold on. Let me put that in driving terms. You exit, your exit is the next exit on the highway, okay? That requires a convex solution. I need to get all the way over to the left-hand lane. I'm talking from a UK perspective here. That's very simple. My exit is next. I need to get over to be ready to take that exit. That's a convex solution, a convex problem. Whereas if you're in a city and there's a parked car, The car ahead lets you go, but you might need to encroach a little bit onto a bus lane for a moment. And then there's also a zebra crossing and you need to keep an eye on that. And maybe it's easier to resist and let the other car go instead. That is obviously a non-convex situation. It's gonna have a lot of answers to it and a lot of points. And basically, Ashok is basically saying that this problem is not only really difficult to sort and figure out and fix and make smooth, easy, safe and stuff, but it's also really difficult to copy and paste that fix or that resolution to other non-convex scenarios because there's so many elements. So sometimes there's a misconception that if there's lots of answers to a problem, that's a good thing, and it's not. It's much better if there's just one answer to the problem. And then the other thing there is high dimensional. So what he means there is that there's a lot of parameters in play when it comes to controlling the vehicle. So my example there is a good example for that, right? Speed scenarios. Is there a bus or a pedestrian? All that stuff. And the computer has to analyze that as quickly as possible to get you through said city street. So Ashok was really asking and answering the question, how are Tesla dealing with these issues? And okay, there's some mad stats here for you. So with its newest version of FSD, your Tesla is doing 2,500 route searches every 1.5 milliseconds. To put that in perspective, that's 1.7 million searches every second. And those searches will yield an input for the car to carry out, or an output for the car to carry out, I should say, which will then find the best of all and therefore improve the, acceleration jerk, or basically making the ride a bit smoother and making a better overall solution. Ashok then layered on top of this their planning algorithms that they use. So the car is basically thinking ahead to ascertain the best way to proceed. So we actually use the car giving you the nod to come through a single lane road due to parked cars either side as an example. Your Tesla will creep in the new world, your Tesla will creep forward to ensure everything is good and, you're letting me go, and then pulls through the gap, leaving the driver to give the thank you hand gesture, which, by the way, all drivers should do. That's a comment from me, not from Tesla. So with planning and vision and a ridiculous amount of route searches per second, Tesla believe FSD will be significantly safer than a human driving, which is key to driving the success of FSD. Now, moving on to labeling. So to train the system, to improve the FSD, Tesla need millions and millions of vector space captures that are fully labeled. Andre showed the process of a human manually, by the way, when I say vector space captures, I mean those 3D spaces, but I'll get onto that. Andre showed the process of a human manually labeling a certain object. And when I say labeling, I'm effectively saying, this is a cone due to its size, so you draw like a size thing. This is a cone due to its shape, so you draw a line around the shape of the cone. This is a cone due to its color, so you capture the color of the cone. This is a cone due to its position. It takes so long. Now, although Tesla have, I think they said 1,000-person data labeling team that are working closely with the engineers for collaboration, that has helped driving their labeling efforts, but it's too slow and it's not yielding anywhere near the output that they need. And like I say, to make a real difference, Tesla need millions of labeled vectors. So as I mentioned in the vision piece, Tesla moving away from image spacing to vector spacing, 3D spacing. This has helped significantly. So rather than labeling on single images, the labelers can now label across that 3D virtual model, think Street View, and can then that can be re-projected out to the cameras on board. So Tesla said that this has increased labeling throughput by 100 times. However, like I say, they need millions, and 100 times improvement still isn't enough. So Andre then took us through their new auto labeling process. And what this is where they capture and save the data from the fleet in the real world. So from, yours and my cars. And they pull that data back in-house where they can work on it offline. They can work on it locally, where they have, an unlimited amount of compute, whereas in a car, they obviously have a limited amount of compute. And instead, these massive supercomputers can do crazy things with this, right? They can auto-label entire roads, entire towns, and begin to learn from the auto-labeling and let that spread more broadly. So it's doing that automatically. A human can then come in and check all of those labels, which of course checking takes way less time than actually drawing lines around a cone, and make small tweaks where needed if the auto labeling system gets something slightly wrong, and then they can move on to the next 3D space that's been captured. Now, to be fair, they didn't go into huge detail on auto labeling, but they did show off their simulation technology off the back of their auto labeling effort, and this was really, really cool to see. It's where they use all the data that they have, and they create like a fake world where they can then simulate different things that are hard to capture. So the simulation looks like imagine like a computer game, right? And they can then simulate things in this computer game that's difficult to capture. For example, the example they used is a family and their dog running down the middle of a highway. So this was really cool. They showed how the cars can then all learn from that simulation, how they can then label from those sims, and how those sims are getting broader and more detailed over time. So lots of cool stuff there in the world of labeling. And then they moved on to Dojo. Now this was highly anticipated. So this is effectively Tesla's in-house customized hardware for the challenges I've outlined just now. So if you imagine all of this data captured, pulled, saved, stored, processed, labeled, and transitioned into a real world output, like a car needs to slow down, that requires an extraordinarily large amount of compute horsepower. Now, luckily for Tesla, horsepower is something that they're good at. See what I did there? So Dojo's main focus was all around, bandwidth, i.e. the speed at which you can pull data, and a high bandwidth supercomputer out there isn't enough for what they're after, so they've made their own. Now, I've got to be really careful not to lose you here in the detail, or actually lose myself. So high level, the hardware that they've created, this Dojo chip, can do 362 teraflops of processes per second, which honestly, that's just insane. And in fact, the Dojo presentation is when, in my opinion, AI Day just came alive, because for Tesla to do this, for Tesla to say, do you know what, we're not going to use other big blue chip companies. Instead, we're going to bring this in-house and we're going to do it ourselves, and we're going to build a supercomputer ourselves, is incredible. It's almost unheard of nowadays. And to give you a feeling of how incredible this is, just listen to Ganesh Venkataramanan talk about Dojo, right? Listen to his excitement, his passion, and just his wonder on all things Dojo related. Take a listen.
Just to give you a comparison point, this is more than 2 times the bandwidth coming out of the state-of-the-art networking switch chips which are out there today. And network switch chips are supposed to be the gold standards for I/O bandwidth. If we put all of it together, we get training optimized chip, our D1 chip. This chip is manufactured in 7 nanometer technology. It packs 50 billion transistors in a miserly 645 millimeter square. One thing you'll notice, 100% of the area out here is going towards machine learning training and bandwidth. There is no dark silicon, there is no legacy support. This is a pure machine learning machine. And this is the D1 chip in a flip chip BGA package. This was entirely designed by Tesla team internally, all the way from the architecture to GDS out and package. This chip is like a GPU level compute with a CPU level flexibility and twice the network chip level I/O bandwidth. If I were to plot the I/O bandwidth on the vertical scale versus teraflops of compute that is available in the state-of-the-art machine learning chips out there, including some of the startups, you can easily see why our design point excels beyond par.
So yeah, Ganesh is proud, he's ecstatic about the Dojo, which is great to see. But this is Tesla. They don't just stop there. Beyond the Dojo 1 chip, Ganesh keeps going to talk about something even bigger, something even better. Check this out.
By now, you must have realized our modularity story is pretty strong. We just put together some tiles. We just tiled together tiles. A 2x3 tile in a tray makes our training matrix, and 2 trays in a cabinet give 100 petaflops of compute. Did we stop here? No. We just integrated seamlessly. We broke the cabinet walls. We integrated these tiles seamlessly all the way through, preserving the bandwidth. There's no bandwidth divot out here. There's no bandwidth cliffs. All the tiles are seamlessly connected with the same bandwidth. And with this, we have an exapod. This is 1 exaflop of compute in 10 cabinets. It's more than 1 million training nodes that you saw. We paid meticulous attention to that training node, and there are 1 million nodes out here with uniform bandwidth.
So there's a chip, like you see in a computer, right? Then he holds up a tile, which is like the size of imagine like a large iPad, right? Or small laptop, which is 9 petaflops of pure brute horsepower, which is just crazy. Then there's 6 tiles in a tray, and then 2 trays in a cabinet. So that's 12 tiles per cabinet. That is 108 petaflops per cabinet. And then the plan is for, as you heard there, an exopod, which is 10 of these cabinets. It's just bonkers. And listen, there's a lot of numbers there, but I guess just note, the tone in his voice. Tesla are clearly so excited about this, which means we should be excited about it too. And this, partnered with the fact that they are so far ahead in the world of AI and vision and labeling and planning and control, means if anyone is going to be producing a fully autonomous vehicle anytime soon, you'd want to hedge your bets on it being Tesla. And by the way, even after the show, you've got your JP Morgans, your Goldman Sachs, your Deutsche Banks of the world. You have all these forecast analysts coming out and saying, okay, the show wasn't perfect necessarily, and yes, there's some unanswered questions still, but all of them, down to the analysts, said right now, no one is able to lace the boots of Tesla in this field. And it reminds me a lot of back in 2012, when it was all about EVs in general. Tesla were just so far ahead, and even today we're saying, if Tesla stopped, it would still take the other manufacturers so many years to catch up. And again, it's happened again, right? AI, Tesla are just so far ahead. Now, this continues for a bit, and then kind of the headline grabbing moment happens. The meme moment, the bit that everyone is talking about. Tesla announces the Tesla bot.
Now, unlike Dojo, obviously that was not real. So Dojo is real. The Tesla bot will be real. But basically, if you think about what we're doing right now with the cars, Tesla is arguably the world's biggest robotics company because our cars are like semi-sentient robots on wheels. And with the full self-driving computer, essentially the inference engine on the car, which will keep evolving obviously, and Dojo, and all the neural nets recognizing the world, understanding how to navigate through the world, it kind of makes sense to put that onto a humanoid form. And we're also quite good at sensors and batteries and actuators. So we think we'll probably have a prototype sometime next year that basically looks like this. And it's intended to be friendly, of course. and navigate through a world built for humans and eliminate dangerous, repetitive, and boring tasks. We're setting it such that it is, at a mechanical level, at a physical level, you can run away from it. And most likely overpower it. So hopefully that doesn't ever happen, but you never know. So it'll be a light, anyway, 5 miles an hour. If you can run faster than that, it'll be fine.
This was the moment that caught the most headlines, caught the most traction, produced the most memes online and all that good stuff. So I'm sure I'm sure you're well aware of the Tesla bot. And I do have a couple of thoughts on this. But first and foremost, as I said at the very start of all of this, the event was all about recruitment. It's about getting people in the industry, the experts, the brain the size of planet, people in the industry of AI, excited and pumped at the idea of working for Tesla in the world of AI. So this wasn't the same as, it didn't have the same feeling as Elon wheeling out a Roadster or a Model Y or a Cybertruck for the first time. This was more of a, here's what we think our industry-leading knowledge and development in this field could lead us to, and we're hoping to make this become a reality soon. Do you want to be part of this team? Hell yeah, I do. Right? That was kind of the feeling. It wasn't so much a product launch. Now, the robot that Elon is talking about basically has the shape of a human being, right? It has 2 legs, 2 arms, a human torso. It has a built-in autopilot computer, a screen where the face is for useful information. It has fully functioning hands with 5 digits, much like humans, right? And this moment was where all the controversies come in and all the question marks and, the analysts freaking out and panicking. And if I I'll try and sum it up in 3 sections, right? Number 1, the first question is, how does this relate to the mission statement that Tesla has? Number 2, a human form factor. Are you sure? And number 3, do we need it? And if so, who needs it? Where is it needed? And why is it needed? So let me take those one by one. And by the way, before I do, I don't want you to think that I'm, a full backer of the Tesla bot strategy or approach. Right now, my position is very much on the fence. Right? I want to wait to make my decision. Do I see the logic? Yeah, I guess I do. Do I have concerns? Absolutely. But is this going to be fascinating to report on over the next few years on Tesla Time? I mean, absolutely, right? I guess the overall position I have is I'm a fan of the products. And in fact, I go one level deeper. I'm a fan of the cars, first and foremost. And that's why I'm here. That's why I'm doing this podcast. So when I share the devil's advocate point of view, I don't want you thinking that I'm absolutely waving the Tesla bot flag, or that I'm a Tesla bot fan from day one. My position is, let's see. Okay, so point 1, how does this relate to the mission statement? So right now, Tesla's mission statement is to drive the advent of sustainable energy. And someone actually this week post the event asked Elon this exact question on Twitter, to which he replied, quote, "Bot is not directly on the path of accelerating a sustainable energy future, but it aspirationally improves the probability that future is good," end quote. So I guess, yeah, he has a point here, and maybe this is the first sign of a change in Tesla's mission statement. Don't forget, Tesla's mission statement has changed before. It's changed in the past. We've seen them drop the transport in. So drive the advent of sustainable energy in transport was the old mission statement, and they got rid of transport. So it's just sustainable energy full stop, as we saw them focus more on batteries and solar, etc. So I wouldn't be surprised to see, when reading Elon's comments here, I wouldn't be surprised to see the mission statement be updated soon. And, with their investment in AI, perhaps they'll update it to something like, improve the likelihood of a better future, or something to that effect. Also, a business might have an overarching mission statement, but not everything in its catalog or everything in its strategy necessarily pushes directly towards that. And the Tesla bot is still going to be battery powered. Tesla will argue it will drive efficiency and perhaps stop you from traveling somewhere to get something done. And therefore, there might be a tenuous link into sustainable energy. But, anyway, that's for a later discussion. I guess there's ways to spin this. But yeah, unlike solar, unlike batteries, unlike electric vehicles, this product doesn't fit as tightly and neatly into that statement. So, we'll wait and see. Second on the list was all around Tesla Bot's human form factor. And I saw a really good video by Marques Brownlee. And he talks about this on his YouTube channel. And basically the point is, robots work best when their form factor is their purpose, and vice versa when their purpose is their form factor. For example, rather than having a robot maid, it's better to have a robotic dishwasher that washes the dishes. Or rather than having a humanoid robot giving you a piggyback, it's better to have a Tesla that gets you from A to B, i.e. a car. Or I guess, that one would be better to say, rather than having a humanoid robot in the driving seat drive you somewhere, it would be better your car drove you there. You get what I mean, right? The actual form factor of the robot is its purpose. And having listened to the presentation, I feel like Tesla are unlocking so many things that they didn't expect to in the world of AI, that they're probably investing so much money, they're probably getting so much out of it that they might feel a bit pinned down by the fact that they can only utilize these findings in effectively cars and roofs. And perhaps they're thinking, when we crack the main AI nut, and we believe we're well ahead of anyone else in doing that, we'll see a snowball of use cases, and we don't want to be confined to cars, roads, or roofs. So, for example, if you've been following Tesla for a long time, you're probably well aware of things like over-the-air updates and new features coming out and FSD leveling up over time. And, as Elon, unveils the Tesla bot, I was sat there and I could just see it. I could just see a world where you buy a Tesla bot which can take care of medial tasks around the house, like actions like go get me or pass me the, or could you check the, things like that. Really simple actions. But in my head, I can just so clearly picture us being, on this podcast in 5 years' time, talking about when we think the housekeeping update will be coming out. The update that's going to bring, apparently it's bringing hoovering or picking up the shopping or cleaning the windows or whatever. Like, that just seems like the most Tesla-y thing to happen. Anyway, in summary to all this, the robot is to spark excitement within the AI community, to hire more people. Does it end up looking like this? I don't think it probably does. I mean, who knows? Will there be many more concept iterations before release? Absolutely. So again, let's just wait and see. And then the final one there around who is this for? What's the use case? This one is tricky. So you heard on stage Elon talk about the robot being designed to do boring, repetitive tasks. That's the statement that he kept using, that humans don't want to do. But more broadly speaking, are we talking about a commercial product, like, back to the vehicles, like the Semi? Or are we talking about a product that you or I can just go out and buy and keep at home, like a Model 3, for example? Like, is this for factories and businesses, or is this for normal people? And I don't think that's really clear right now. And I don't think Tesla really know right now, because it is so such early stages. And Elon mentions about going to the shops to get groceries. But, you got to think like things like online shopping, or more recently, like Amazon drone drop-off program and all that good stuff. There's other ways that this will probably already be being achieved by the time that domestic robots become a truly accessible thing. And I heard actually Ryan McCaffrey on the Ride the Lightning podcast, and by the way, go and check that podcast out, it's amazing. I heard him talk about, him and his wife were discussing that if they could buy a robot which did all the house chores for $10,000, right? They buy a one-off purchase, $10,000, but now they don't have to do any of the chores, and it would give them back time at the weekend and stuff like that. Then they would completely go for it. And I completely get that. I really do. But then the pessimist in me thinks, well, for that to be the case, it has to be perfect, right? For example, have you ever asked... I can't say her name. Have you ever asked the Amazon you-know-who lady? I won't say her name because I don't want to set off everyone's smart speakers. But if you ever ask her to tell you something and she's got it completely wrong, right? She starts talking to you about something completely different, completely separate. The level of frustration that you get is insane, which is mad to think about because the technology didn't exist 10 years ago. And now this amazing technology where you can literally talk to someone who's there to help you. As soon as they get it wrong, you get angry. So imagine you ask your Tesla bot to, I don't know, clean the floors, and the robot just starts headbutting the wardrobe or something. I don't know. Like, that would just be, like, it just does something completely different. That would just be infuriating. So, I don't know. But by the way, what I do know is, yes, colonizing Mars is a great use case, which I've seen a lot online. And maybe Elon's kind of looking at this with his SpaceX hat on, and he's trying to tie up things all together in a nice bow. Or for Tesla fans, I think one great use case would be charging your car. You can imagine going into a service station and you go into a supercharger and the Tesla bot plugs your car in for you. I talked about needing canopies in UK superchargers because, when it's chucking it down, that charge port feels so far away. Well, with a Tesla bot, you wouldn't need to get out. You wouldn't need to get out and get wet. I also like the idea that the robot will only plug in Teslas. And just like when, they're talking about opening up superchargers to other EVs. I like the idea of an ID3 pulls in and the Tesla bot just walks away. Like, just doesn't. But anyway, I'm dark and twisted. But anyway, that's a whole other thing. But seriously though, you think about the robo-taxi scheme, which again, we've talked about a lot on the podcast. Your car goes out when you're not needing it. It picks people up. It earns you money. Then it goes to a supercharger, gets plugged in by a Tesla bot and comes back full of charge when you need it. So, there's use cases there. But let me say this again. This is extremely early days. Elon has showed this to drive job applications into their AI department and to gain attention. I suspect that both of those things have happened since AI Day, if the internet is anything to go by. So, I'm going to continue sitting on the fence. I'd ask that, my listeners just give it time. Let's see. Ryan expressed concerns around will investment, in all things Tesla being shifted to this. Is that the best place for that investment, for that budget to go to? And, that's a fair question to ask. And right now, let's just wait and see, like so many things with Tesla. Now, before we wrap up, at the end of the conference, there was a Q&A session, and it was a beefy Q&A session, actually. I think it was like 45 minutes or something like that. I'm trying to look at my notes. It's something like 45 minutes. So it was a big Q&A session. And although a lot of the questions fielded were from extremely clever people, and therefore not only did I not understand the answer, sometimes I didn't even understand the question. I do have a couple of clips that I'd like to play for you. And to kick us off here, the first question that came up that I want to share with you is, here it is. When will Dojo be available? When will Dojo become operational? Take a listen to this.
So we should have Dojo operational next year. And I think we'll obviously use it for training, video training. Fundamentally this is about the primary application initially is we've got vast amounts of video, and how do we train vast amounts of video as efficiently as possible, and also shorten the amount of time. Like if you're trying to train to a task, just in general, innovation is how many iterations and what is the average progress between each iteration. And so if you can reduce the time between iterations, the rate of improvement is much better. So if it takes sometimes a couple days for a model to train versus a couple hours, that's a big deal. But the acid test here, and what I've told the Dojo team is it's successful if the software team wants to turn off the GPU cluster. But if they want to keep the GPU cluster on, it's not successful.
Okay, so next year is the answer. But as per his comments here, I think it's safe to expect a significant improvement in FSD, or at least speed of improvement in FSD as Dojo comes online and operational. Okay, what do we got here? For my fellow international listeners, i.e. all of us outside of the US, Elon was asked, a lot of the data shown today is shown from US streets, roads, highways, all that good stuff. He was asked, how do you expect this to transfer to other road networks beyond the shores of the US? Here's what the Tesla team had to say.
Well, we actually do train on using data from probably like 50 different countries, but we have to pick, as we're trying to advance full self-driving, we need to pick one country, and since we're located here, we pick the US. And then we get a lot of questions like, why not even Canada? I'm like, well, because the roads are a little different in Canada, different enough. And so when trying to solve a hard problem, you want to say like, okay, let's not add additional complexity right now. Let's just solve it for the US, and then we'll extrapolate to the rest of the world. But we do use video from all around the world.
Yeah, I think a lot of what we are building is very country agnostic. Fundamentally, all the computer vision components and so on don't care too much about country-specific sort of features. Different countries have roads, and they have curbs, and they have cars, and everything we're building is fairly general for that.
Yeah, and then the prime directive is don't crash.
Right, and that's true for every country.
Yes, this is the prime directive. Even right now, the car is pretty good at not crashing. And so just basically, whatever it is, don't hit it. Even if it's a UFO that crash landed on the highway, and still don't hit it. You should not need to recognize it in order to not hit it. So that's very important.
So it's good to hear that they do look at other countries, and to be fair, it makes sense that they're based in the US. They know US roads the best. This is a super difficult problem, so you have to start somewhere. And then Andre's comments are also valid. It seems like a lot of the data / knowledge is transferable. So it sounds like it's more tweaks than rewrites. I do think the whole kind of, we're training it not to hit anything is a bit of a, that wasn't really the question. Like, we're talking about full self-driving here. We're not talking about, collision avoidance program, right? So I don't know, that seemed a bit of a, forget that question, listen to this instead kind of feel. But, a lot of the points, Andre's points and Elon's points, around them mapping it to other roads and stuff and tweaking it from there, are good points. So I wanted to play that because I know a lot of my listeners are outside of the US. Okay, what have we got here? Hardware 4. Hardware 4 was announced back at Autonomy Day, I think it was, in 2019, which, that was around the time that Tesla begun shipping Teslas with Hardware 3. So the question is, what about Hardware 4? When can we expect to see Hardware 4 coming out of the factories? Here's what the team had to say.
Well, I'm confident that Hardware 3, or the Full Self-Driving Computer 1, will be able to achieve full self-driving at a safety level much greater than a human, probably, at least 200 or 300% better than a human. Then obviously there will be a future Hardware 4 or Full Self-Driving Computer 2, which we'll probably introduce with the Cybertruck, so maybe in about a year or so. That is probably, that'll be about 4 times more capable, roughly. But it's really just going to be, like, can we take it from, say, for argument's sake, 300% safer than a person to 1,000% safer? Just like there are people on the road who, with varying driving abilities, but we still let people drive. You don't have to be the world's best driver to be on the road.
Classic Elon there, using a fantastic analogy to make things relatable, which I love it when he does that. For my US listeners, note there, Elon refers to the Cybertruck as a year or so. That comment alone blew up on Twitter, as he's effectively suggesting there's going to be no sign of the Cybertruck in the US this year. But if you listen to Tesla Time, we talk about that a lot. We've been calling that one for a while now. Now, in terms of his talk track around Hardware 4, it would be really interesting to hear how exactly Hardware 4 helps improve the safety and functionality of full self-driving so by such a large margin. They never really talked about that at the conference or in the presentations, so a double click there would be interesting to hear, and I'm sure we'll hear that closer to the launch of Hardware 4. Okay, so what have we got left? Ah, yes, this is actually the last question in the Q&A session, and that was, when will the 8 Autopilot cameras get upgraded on the cars?
Well, with Hardware 4, we will have a next generation camera, but I have to say that the current cameras, we have not reached the limit of the current cameras. And I'm confident we can achieve full self-driving with much higher safety than humans with the current cameras and current compute hardware. But you know, it would be good to be 1,000% better rather than 300% better. So we'll see continued evolution on all levels in pursuit of that goal.
With the next generation camera upgrade mentioned, I wouldn't hold your breath on getting an optional upgrade to Hardware 4 when it rolls out. And when I say optional, the rumor way back when was that there would be a free automatic upgrade to anyone with Hardware 3 to Hardware 4. Then that rumor kind of pivoted to an optional upgrade where you could pay to have that upgrade if you wanted it. But if you think they'd have to replace all the cameras on the front, the back, the sides, the interior, and then you'd also have to replace the front console. Thinking about it, and with that answer that Elon's given there, I just think that puts the nail in the coffin to that rumor. I just can't see that being a thing. I think it's more likely to be if you want Hardware 4, well, you got to buy a Tesla, right? As in, you got to buy a new car, kind of thing. That's the way I feel like this is going. But who knows? I could be wrong. So that was the last question of the show, and the show came to an end. So listen, there's God, I'm an hour in. I've tried to summarise the whole conference as best I can in it's a little bit easier to digest manner, something a little bit more easier to understand. But like I say, if you want all the juice from the show, then go and check it out. It's on Tesla's YouTube channel. I think we can now head to a close. Like I say, I hope I was able to digest this mammoth and technical event and portray it back to you in somewhat of an understandable manner, even though sometimes I don't understand what's going on. Let me know what you think. Before I wrap up, I want to say a massive thank you to everyone listening. I wasn't able to bring you the other headlines this week due to, just the size of AI Day. And, like I say, we're an hour in. I don't want to be releasing like a 90-minute show. I want to be respectful of your time. But rest assured, next week's episode will cover all the news coming out of the world of Tesla, and I will certainly pick up on any stories that were missed this week. If you'd like to get in touch with the show or me, then you absolutely can. The email address is teslatimepodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great week, folks. Stay safe. Peace.
Tesla time.